Why are there so many shows starring Muppets and dozens of movies too? They said they'd watch everyone and they mean it. It's something that they've got to do. So now they've pledged you a lifelong commitment. The Muppets, Matthew and Sam.
Hello and welcome to Kermitment, the podcast where two friends have vowed to watch all things Muppets. I'm Matthew Gatos.
And I'm Sam Schultz.
And this week we watched the movie The Great Santa Claus Switch, as well as some Muppet appearances on The Flip Wilson Show and a weird little interview with Big Bird.
A very weird interview with Big Bird.
It seems like a guy who didn't really know much about Big Bird or the Sesame Street Muppets or anything really, was sent to interview Big Bird backstage in Dallas and just asked the most awkward questions possible. But we'll get to that. For now, we are in 1970. We are wrapping up 1970. This will take us through Christmas of 1970.
This is kind of the beginning of us being in 1970 also, right? Like, we've dipped in and out of 1970 over the course of the whole thing.
Yeah, because we've talked a little bit of out of order type of things as we've gone through the 68, 69, where they were very prolific in making a lot of things. So yeah, technically, the Muppets on Puppets came out in 1970.
A lot of those Ed Sullivan appearances were in 1970 as well.
Yeah, The Octopus's Garden, the What Kind of Fool Am I, all those came out in 1970. They also were on the Emmys in 1970, or rather, Big Bird was on the Emmys in 1970. Couldn't find a clip of that, unfortunately. But yes, as Sesame Street was picking up, they were doing a lot more. And so Grover was on The Tonight Show, and we had all of this sort of happening right around 1969, 1970. So, yeah, a lot is happening. We've talked about early 1970 a bit already, but this is going from September 1970 through the end, which is Great Santa Claus Switch aired on December 20th, 1970. And right in the middle of this is when season 2 of Sesame Street is premiering, which is November 9th, 1970. So a lot of these Flip Wilson appearances, and also I think the appearance they were doing in Dallas that Big Bird gets interviewed backstage from was all sort of to promote the upcoming season of Sesame Street. But the real focus of what we watched today was The Great Santa Claus Switch. But before we get too much into that, I wanted to ask you, Sam, how you feel about watching a Christmas movie in May.
It kind of hurt me a little bit because this one would have been, I've never seen it before, and I love Christmas, and this would have been a really fun one to watch during Christmas when your heart is full of Christmas joy. But also, sometimes I'll cheat and watch a Halloween movie or a Christmas movie partway through the year just to get that little fix in. So it wasn't too bad. But I did find myself slipping into the Christmas spirit during this movie.
So, Sam, why don't you tell us what we watched this week?
The Great Santa Claus Switch. It's the night before Christmas, and Santa and his little elves are in Santa's workshop happily finishing up all the toys for the children. But, unknown to them, Cosmo Scam, Dark Magician and King of Evil, is living in a cave beneath the workshop, hatching an evil scheme with his henchman, the monstrous Frackles. The plan: kidnap Santa, impersonate him, an easy task considering both Santa and Cosmo are played by Art Carney, and use Santa's magic sleigh to break into and rob every house on Earth, thus enabling Cosmo to achieve his ultimate plan of making about $1 billion. So Thig and Thog, who are a giant pair of dumb idiot Frackles, go up, nab Santa, and bring him back down to Cosmo's dungeon. Cosmo goes up to the workshop in his disguise, and everything seems to be going okay, and he's tricking the elves, even though he's being a little bit more rude than Santa normally is, until the elves go on break, but one of them, Fred, stays behind and overhears Cosmo talking about his plan and removing his fake beard because it makes his face itchy. So Fred confronts Cosmo, but ends up thrown in the dungeon, and then one by one, all the other elves end up in the dungeon too as they notice things that Santa should not be doing. Once all the elves are in the dungeon, they hatch a plan, make disguises that look like rocks somehow, sneak their way out of their cell, and find the key to open Santa's jail cell. So Fred goes off to find Santa. The other elves go off to try to stop Cosmo from doing his evil thing. Meanwhile, in Santa's cell, he has befriended Thag and Thog because he's Santa and everybody loves him. But Cosmo catches them being friends and locks them all up in the jail. So they're sitting, despairing that Christmas is ruined, when Fred falls through the dungeon ceiling. He gives Santa the key, and then Fred goes off to stop Cosmo as well, who's about to take off in the magic sleigh. So he does this by untying the reindeer, leaving Cosmo stranded. And then when Cosmo discovers what has happened, he just fucking murks Fred. And Fred looks extremely dead. And
I
flies
thought
his little
for
limp-
sure they had just killed a Muppet, which I was like, bold choice, because he, like you said, he gets thrown across and is just
he explodes and his limp little body flies away.
And they make a lot of times you see a ragdoll version of a Muppet fly across a scene, but you see him fall onto this rock and just land there and not
the camera
move.
lingers on him.
Yeah, he does not move at all. And I thought when they go to pick him up, I was like, ugh, this is going to be a really weird, sad ending to this Christmas special.
So Cosmo gets blown away. Down back below the workshop, Santa has won over all the Frackles with the magic of Christmas, and they help him out of the cave, and they all confront Cosmo together, and they tell him they won't help him with his evil scheme anymore. Fred apparently is fine, as we just said, and all the Frackles and elves celebrate as Santa flies off to deliver presents. And even Cosmo joins in on the celebration when Thog comes out with a little present for him and makes him feel better about his plan not working out. And this is also all narrated by Ed Sullivan and some extremely weird mouth-breathing children. The end.
I think that's the perfect summary of the format of this, is that, oh yeah, it's an Ed Sullivan Show special.
It was broadcast during the Ed Sullivan Show.
Yeah, he just gave up his time slot to promote this thing that he sort of co-produced with the Muppets.
Mm-hmm. And I assume it's based on that skit that they did, kind of,
on
the Ed Sullivan Show?
I pulled this information from the Jim's Red Book site, which is what pulls information from Jim Henson's journals. And I'm just going to quote this so I don't mess anything up. But in 1963, Jim Henson and Jerry Jewell came up with an idea for a Christmas special originally titled The Witch Who Stole Santa Claus, or The Sinister Santa Claus Switch. The story revolved around a failed plot to kidnap and impersonate Santa Claus in order to rob every home in the world. Tamanella Grinderfall, who we've seen many times and loved before, the witch from Tales of Tinker D, was to play a starring role, conceivably the witch who would steal Santa Claus.
Cosmo is very Tamanilla-y. He even has a little catchphrase he says after he says his name. It's not the witchiest witch of them all, but he's the king of evil.
Well, they're always trying to be their own hype man, essentially.
Yeah.
It went on to say that Jim and Jerry Jewell reworked the script numerous times, and the title changed as well. And then in order to sell the idea to television executives, Jim went and made a bunch of paintings along with the proposal to be like, hey, here's what Frackles look like. And then it circulated for a while before Ed Sullivan. And then it circulated for a couple of years, and then Ed Sullivan, who we talked about previously, was sort of on his way out of the limelight.
This was 1970, and his show would end in 1971 after being on the air for 40 years.
Yeah, and he seemed to be latching onto the Muppets as an important part of the end of his show. He agreed to produce this hour-long musical special and air it on his regular Sunday evening time slot on December 20th, 1970.
I wish I could I wish there was more information about the ratings of these things, how well they did.
Yeah.
If nobody watched this or if the whole world watched this.
Yeah, because I feel like it's, I don't know, because it's Ed Sullivan Show, it feels like this famous thing that we've always just heard of, but maybe he wasn't as popular then, so maybe nobody watched this. But I feel like when you hear was on the Ed Sullivan Show, it feels like a really big deal. But when you find out his show ran forever, it's oh, maybe that wasn't as big of a deal.
This was the last 4 months of his show being on the air. I think it ended early 71.
Yeah. But yeah, the crew on this was a mix of Muppet performers and Ed Sullivan people. So it was produced and directed by some people who had worked on Ed Sullivan, but then it was written by Jerry Jewell. The music was done by Joe Raposo, who we talked about on the Sesame Street episode. But then the set design was done by an Ed Sullivan guy. And so yeah, it was definitely this mix of Henson people and Sullivan people working together.
And much more so than Hey Cinderella, it feels like there are people working on it who have worked in television and set design for 40 years or 30 years or whatever. because the sets look great. It looks very good.
Yeah, I was surprised at like because early on in the movie, there's only like 2 sets essentially. You get like Santa's workshop, and then you get the Frackle main cave area, and so you're like, okay, the whole thing's kind of just going to be in these 2 spots. But then once they start capturing the elves and putting them in this like jail, you get to see these cells, you get to see the hallways where they're sneaking out through, and you get to see different parts of this set that I'm like, oh, okay, they were able to put more creative like thought into this.
And the cave set's huge. It has like 2 floors. And there's also like dozens of Muppets in some of the scenes, which I feel like up until now we've seen like 5 Muppets at once or something like that. Like as many arms as Jim and Frank Oz have is as many Muppets as there could be.
Yeah,
this one.
This seemed to be definitely this seemed to be sort of like a renaissance of like more like we can do more if we have more people. What?
Yeah.
Before they just use like 3-4 people at a time. And there was a few like notable first timers on this set because you had Richard Hunt and Fran Brill, who the Great Santa Claus Switch was their first thing. Richard Hunt went on to be Scooter, Beaker, Janice, Statler, Sweetums, and then Fran Brill.
Neither of them did voices in this though, right?
They did, I believe, yeah. At least,
they did?
Yeah, because Fran Brill specifically, I believe, is like the bird nest Frackle, I think is what they call that Frackle,
okay,
which is like sort of a pterodactyl-looking Frackle that just sort of squawks things. But Fran Brill would go on to be Prairie Dawn and Zoe on Sesame Street and was the first female puppeteer hired, aside from Jane Henson, who was like not really hired. She was like defaultly a part of the founding of it. But yeah, they both just like kind of got hired because I think this surge of needing new performers, because it turned out Fran Brill answered an ad thinking they just needed a voiceover artist because she was trying to get into voiceover work, and they were like, oh no, we'd like you to do puppets, and she's like, all right, I'll do puppets.
I think she's in Street Gang maybe and tells that same story where she just showed up to like a Sesame Street audition and then got sucked up into this whole world.
Yeah, it seems like she was doing other things like stage performing and singing and these things. So it wasn't necessarily this thing where she intended to be a Sesame Street lifer, but definitely became like she retired in 2014. But up until then was still just doing Prairie Dawn.
That seems like it happens a lot. Like that happened to Frank Oz too.
Yeah.
He didn't want it. He seems like he didn't want to do it the entire time he did it.
But it's interesting to hear them. If you watch that documentary, The Muppet Guys Talking, she's on that talking with Frank Oz and Jerry Nelson and all them. And yeah, it definitely feels like it was a boys club for sure. And she was brought in as like the girl. But yeah, she would go on like Prairie Dawn debuts on Sesame Street the following year after this comes out. So it was definitely a time where Henson was recruiting a lot more puppeteers to come on board. And I think that not only does it help them do massive scenes like all of the Frackles in the giant cave, but it also helps expand the cast of the Sesame Street Muppets so that Jim and Frank don't have to do everything. Because in the Street Gang book, they specifically talk about how the Muppet segments were hard to do because they could only do them a few days a month. Like they had to batch shoot like a ton of the Muppet things all at once. At least the Jim and Frank ones. So they were really trying to like get more Sesame Street Muppet performers that were like exclusive to Sesame Street, like a Fran Brill or a Carol Spinney that would just be available more often.
Before we talk more about that, we also watched the Flip Wilson show.
Yeah, we watched a couple episodes. Well, not full episodes, but we watched a couple appearances from 2 different episodes.
The Flip Wilson show was like a variety / talk show from what I could understand of it. It was kind of chopped up from what we saw. And the very first episode was one of the episodes we watched. And the 5th episode was the other episode we watched.
I did not realize that.
Yeah, the Muppets were like the featured guests on the very first episode. That's the one where Big Bird sings the ABC song.
Yeah.
So Sesame Street Muppets show up, do like little skits from the show. In the first episode, it's just Big Bird, I think, and maybe Oscar shows up in that one too, but we didn't have that clip. Yeah,
it was apparently cut from syndication, which I think means it's going to be hard for us to see because it only aired like once.
It's gone forever, yeah. Then this 5th episode was kind of like, seemed like the big Sesame Street showcase because Susan was there from Sesame Street along with Oscar and Big Bird, and I think maybe some other characters who we also didn't see. And they perform some more songs and skits from the show with Raymond Burr is just hanging out there, a.k.a. Perry Mason or Ironsides.
I did not know. Like, I've heard of Perry Mason. I've heard of Ironsides.
Yeah.
I would not have recognized Raymond Burr at all. But, like, he makes multiple jokes about him, like, being in the courtroom, never losing a case. And I'm like, okay, I have to Google this guy. Who is this man? And then finding out that he played Perry Mason, I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense to the audience who's there.
He's like an old-timey TV guy from their perspective.
Yeah.
Who has just had Ironsides, which is kind of like his resurgent show, I think. And it's also the very first time a green Oscar the Grouch appeared on TV, apparently.
Yeah, this was before season 2 debuted, and so Green Oscar debuts in season 2 of Sesame Street, but people got to see a sneak peek on the Flip Wilson show. In Carol Spinney's book, he also talks about that it was the first time Green Oscar appeared, but he also talks about the rare appearance of a Big Bird pratfall. Which,
Big Bird looks like he hurts himself.
Yeah, it definitely looked like an accident because we get to Big Bird's entrance in both of these episodes is that he's like stumbling through garbage and is like sort of like we see in the first episode of Sesame Street where he's just clumsy and doesn't know how to walk through things. And the second time he's doing this, he walks out and just eats it. He just falls right on his ass into a pile of garbage.
Smashes his ass against like a railing that's behind him.
Yeah, and you can tell this was unexpected because everyone is laughing. Like Susan or Loretta, who plays Susan on Sesame Street, is like cannot get her next line out because she's just laughing. So it's very clear this was not like supposed to happen.
I did think the skit where they're trying to find Sesame Street was kind of interesting. They're like, it was like the only time that they rooted Sesame Street like in a geographic location. They're talking about like streets that intersect with it.
And you get the Stanley Myron Handelman, who's the stand-up comedian who cannot understand the concept of Sesame Street.
He thinks it's a restaurant for some reason.
Well, because he's thinking about sesame as like,
oh, sesame seeds.
Yes. He's playing the dumb guy of like, what's a sesame?
I did not get that.
And then Susan's like, no, it's open sesame, to like open your mind to these new ideas.
I was wondering if that was the first time they ever, or like the only time they've ever explained what the show meant.
I mean, publicly,
what that
maybe.
Title means.
Because we got it in the pitch reel. Because, yeah, it definitely is a thing that I never questioned as a child of why it was called Sesame Street. But when you start to think about it, it quickly is like, wait, why is it called Sesame Street? I don't understand at all.
It has a nice ring to it, so you don't really think about it too much. And also, this was a little bit muddled last time because of the production of Hey Cinderella, but now we are officially in the 70s, baby. And in this year, the Beatles broke up. Simon and Garfunkel broke up. Dick Nixon is the president now. Apollo 13 also blew up this year, but everything turned out okay with that. The biggest movies were Midnight Cowboy and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. They would like set the tone for the bullshit 70s movies to come where everything is just like a vignette and nothing is very funny. But the music of this time I thought was interesting because in this year, some of the like biggest selling acts were Black Sabbath, James Taylor, Three Dog Night, The Who, Johnny Cash, like all of the Beatles solo projects. Basically, like if you turn on the radio right now, there will be like 10 radio stations that are playing a song from like 1970 or 71. And there was like disco was big, classic rock was big, prog was big, early metal, new wave was all either like here or a year away. So this is like the period that we are all perpetually stuck in terms of popular music. Also, Westerns are like dying out on TV and they're being deconstructed in film with movies like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and True Grit, which are like kind of satires or like investigating the myth of the West a little bit more. And on TV, instead of Westerns, there's medical and detective shows, which are taking over, which is still what we're watching to this day. And also soap operas are booming and game shows are booming. And variety shows are also big on TV with Flip Wilson, like Carol Burnett. Sonny and Cher will come out next year. And this, of course, will culminate in the Muppets having their own variety show after they've starred on like every other variety show. They've done like guest appearances. In terms of things that tie into the past of the Muppets, the Huntley-Brinkley Report ends this year. That was the show that Sam and Friends would like run before, which is how it got so popular in the first place. And Ed Sullivan, the Ed Sullivan Show, which the Muppets have been on multiple times at this point, and we're on for the Santa Claus Switch, will end next year in 1971.
It's interesting thinking about those early 70s because I think with the Flip Wilson show, you can definitely feel like the 60s hanging on. Like specifically the group like Sunday's Child that comes out and performs a little bit. I looked into them, and it turns out their career kind of went nowhere. After this, they put out one album, kind of went nowhere, and then disbanded. The article I found said, without fanfare, they disbanded. I was like, that's a bummer. But and then it's also interesting when I was looking into the comedian, the Stanley Myron Handelman, was talking about him being a stand-up comedian on variety shows from like the mid-'60s through the mid-'70s, and talked about sort of the decline of variety shows in the mid-'70s and how that sort of comedy sort of started going away, which again, we've talked about how like the Muppet Show starts in the mid-'70s. So like right as all these other sort of variety shows are dying and going away, the Muppets are coming in like be like, hey, we got our own. It's different because we're not people.
It is kind of, I think that variety shows burned like real hot and bright at the beginning of the 70s too, because like we're going to watch a ton of them coming up.
It's like podcasts. Like at the time, somebody got one and then they were like, every celebrity needs one of these. Let's give everyone an hour of TV time to do whatever the hell they want.
But I guess the other context is that, like we've said a bunch of times, Sesame Street seems like it's super hot shit right now. Big Bird seems like he's everywhere and a huge celebrity at the time.
Yeah, when I was looking up, because I was confused by the interview that we watched. That guy, I guess we could talk about that now. The guy interviewing Big Bird backstage, he's interviewing him in Dallas for like a local TV show, and I was trying to figure out like, okay, why was Big Bird in Dallas? And it was a series of like a touring show that they were doing for Sesame Street, where they would go around and just perform some of the songs on stage so people would know more about Sesame Street. And the article I found about it was like really snarky, basically like scolding Sesame Street, like, really? You don't think people know about your show, Sesame Street? You got to promote it even harder. We all know you're popular. Everyone loves you. And I was like, this is a weird, I don't like this person who's writing this article, but it did sort of set the tone of like, clearly Sesame Street was well known pretty fast out the gate. So they did a good job, I guess, in marketing themselves and getting it out there. And I think talking about Big Bird especially, like we saw he was on the Ed Sullivan Show right away. He's on the Flip Wilson Show right away. Clearly, Big Bird made an impact.
But on the flip side of that, the guy doing the interview doesn't seem to really understand Sesame Street or Big Bird in any capacity.
No, he just sees a big bird sitting in front of him and he's like, I'm going to ask about eggs, I guess. He's like, hey, did you ever lay an egg? And Big Bird's like, no, I'm a boy bird. He's like, oh, well, have you met any girl birds? Like,
he asked him how he knows he's a boy bird.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Like, how do you know? And he's like, well, that's a very personal question.
All the questions are about the sexual reproduction of Big Bird.
Yeah, he does not understand that this is a show for like 4-year-olds.
Or he just froze up. Maybe he was starstruck by Big Bird and couldn't think of any good questions. And he thought about that day for the rest of his life, and it was humiliating for him.
I think that guy did exactly what he wanted to do that day, because he asks the question about, like, did you ever lay an egg on stage? And clearly, like, there's, like, the saying of, like, oh, he laid an egg as, like, you messed up. Because, and that's the joke he wanted to get to. You could just tell, because he asked that question, and it kind of goes nowhere. He starts asking about, like, Big Bird's reproductive organs, and if he's never met a girl Big Bird, and like maybe he'd go to Africa to find one. It goes nowhere. Like literally he asked the question about like going to Africa to find a girl Big Bird, and Big Bird says like, I can't go all the way to Africa. And the interviewer turns to the camera, he's like, well, that's Big Bird from Sesame Street. But he ends his thing with like, he says he's never laid an egg, but we'll see about that tonight.
Yeah, rude thing to say also.
Yeah. But like clearly that's what he was just working towards the entire time, was like, I got a perfect bird egg joke. But I felt for Carol Spinney in that moment, because I think you often see in interviews like Jim Henson or somebody having to like field an awkward question for Kermit. But at least like he's there as a human being. They still understand that they're talking to a human with a puppet. This guy is like embarrassing Big Bird for his own personal gain in a way where I'm like, Carol Spinney isn't even like sitting next to Big Bird to defend himself. Like Carol Spinney has to like be in character this whole time as like a children's performer.
He can't be like, come on, man.
Yeah. You want me to bend you over and show you I'm a boy bird?
Well, so that's kind of all I had to say about Flip Wilson and that interview.
Yeah, I think that the Flip Wilson ones were interesting because it's very clearly people who sort of understand Sesame Street and are leaning into that because they have Big Bird comes out and sings, see if I can pronounce this, Abkadef Gajekelmanop Verstuvwixes.
Something like that.
I think I said that right. He sings that like in its entirety. And then they also do like a counting game with Raymond Burr and Flip Wilson and all these people.
That was cute.
Yeah, and they have like the numbers flying out of their mouths, which felt very Sesame Street. And they did a visual effect in that section that I still don't really understand how they pulled it off.
When they did like green screened all the letters onto the back, or the numbers or whatever onto the back of the thing.
Yeah, like they're dancing on top
that
of a video screen and they're like in front of it. But like everything is like keyed out really, really well, but they weren't on a green screen.
But the set's not a green screen.
Yeah.
So I wonder if, maybe they're... I have no freaking clue how they did that either. Maybe the set was just painted in the right colors that they had their like key exactly right to key it out when they needed to or something.
Yeah,
but
it was one of those things where you look back and you're just like, I would have trouble doing that today from a technical standpoint. And they were doing it on their first episode or second episode or whatever of their variety show in 1970.
But yeah, you're right. It was like they were recreating Sesame Street on what I assume was like prime time adult oriented comedy show. Yeah. They did a good job and they were very game to like pretend like Big Bird was a real Big Bird and like have a little comedy routine with Oscar the Grouch. And they were really good. They were actually really good now that I think about it more.
Yeah, like everyone really committed to the idea as opposed to like the Mike Douglas show where we had examples of some people buying into it, other people just being like, oh, it's the Muppet guys, whatever.
Well, Mike Douglas was much more like the Big Bird interviewer guy. Mm-hmm. He would have asked about Kermit's penis eventually, given enough time.
Well, I mean, they eventually go back on the Mike Douglas show in the mid-'70s, so who knows?
Oh, we'll see.
Maybe we'll get some questions about that. But we will watch some more Flip Wilson show appearances over the next few episodes, I think. They continue to appear on the Flip Wilson show throughout its run, I think, so we'll talk more about that. But the star of the show this week is The Great Santa Claus Switch, the movie we watched, the TV special. I'm just going to start off by saying I loved it.
Yeah, it was great.
It's so good. I want to like fold this into my rotation of like Muppet Christmas Carol, Muppet Family Christmas, Muppet Christmassy type of things that I watch in December.
I imagine there's not like a more high-def version of it out there, is there?
No. This seemed to be, I found a couple different versions. I've talked about before, I think, on this podcast, where my two main sources of Muppet material are either YouTube or archive.org, which has... the majority of the time has the better quality versions of things. Like next week we're watching The Frog Prince, and it kind of only exists on archive.org for us to watch. And they do really good archival scans of Laserdiscs and all this stuff. This time I was like looking for better copies and everything, and the best copy I could find that was like understandable audio and decent visuals is this bad VHS rip that exists on YouTube. Which, again, happy it exists, happy we're able to watch it, but it's a bummer that there hasn't been like a better released version, because I assume that's tied up in the whole Ed Sullivan, Jim Henson co-production of it all, that like the rights to this are murky. But I don't know, I could see them reissuing this on DVD or Blu-ray and it doing pretty well. You sort of predicted that these early fantasy storytelling ones that you were going to be things that you did not care for. And like, Hey Cinderella, we had mixed feelings on. But this one, we clearly both thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah, I think I should have made an exception for this one because I do love Christmas stuff so much. The one I think I'm really going to hate is the Muppet Musicians of Bremen. But what I think this one has that Hey Cinderella didn't have was Jerry Jewell writing it.
Absolutely.
And I just think Jerry Jewell must be like a comedy genius or something, or like he just writes the kind of comedy that I like a lot, because there's just no spark to Hey Cinderella, really. But this one was just as funny as The Tales of Tinker D, which he also wrote. And like all the Rolf skits that he also wrote. Maybe like Jerry Jewell has just been with the Muppets for so long that he gets what kind of comedy they can do, and he gets like what it sounds funny for Jim to say in his wacky voices and stuff.
Yeah, I think I was sort of blaming the characters a little bit in the Hey Cinderella episode, saying that, like, to me, not having recognizable Muppets hurt it, and that we only had really Kermit as a recognizable Muppet, and then having these other side characters, I couldn't really connect with them. Clearly, that wasn't the problem.
No, because there's nobody in this.
No, there's not a single recognizable Muppet, aside from Proto Gonzo, that we'll get to talking about later.
Thog, but Thog never talks again, I guess, maybe? Or
Yeah, we have Thog and Thig, who are the two big,
Yeah.
meaty bodyguards, and Thog continues to stick around for a while, and Thig is never seen again.
No, that's sad because he's kind of like a more interesting puppet, I think.
Yeah, he's the smarter one of the two. He's a more interesting puppet, and he just goes away, never to be seen again after this. But yeah, having no real recognizable characters in this did not bother me at all because all of the characters were written really well and really funny and had specific points of view, whereas I feel like they didn't do that in Hey Cinderella as much. Like the two stepsisters were essentially the same character, just doubled, and the king didn't really have even as much personality as he had in Tales of Tinker D and other things. So this felt like each little character got their own personality, even from like specific Frackles to specific elves to to the Cosmo and the Santa, and it just overall felt
The Santa.
yeah, the titular Santa. But there was very clearly like a blueprint laid out here for what would become other things in the world of Muppets. Like obviously Frackles becoming Fraggles, even specific characters feeling very much like early versions of other characters. I think you have Lothar, who is the psychic Frackle who lives inside of a cauldron.
Yeah, he lives in a hot spring in the middle of this underground cave, and he's so funny.
Oh yeah, it goes back to your Jim Henson has two voices theory.
He's just Rolf, but as like a dragon who lives in a hot spring.
Yeah, he's just like Rolf, but like stoned Rolf a little bit. It's a little bit like the sorry for forgetting this name, but there's a character that Jim Henson eventually does on Fraggle Rock that is sort of like the soothsayer psychic type of character.
I can't remember either.
But how do you feel about Cosmo Scam? I guess just like Art Carney in general as playing both Santa and Cosmo Scam. I think Cosmo Scam is the stronger role for him that he gets.
His Santa's pretty good too, though.
Yeah, yeah. Like I think you could watch this back then and not even realize they were the same person.
I had no idea until this morning when I was looking at the cast list.
Yeah,
I didn't think they were the same guy. I thought Santa was just some guy.
Yeah, he does a pretty good job.
He was Art Carney
in both roles
because they walk around each other in that one part, and it must be because Cosmo Scam turns into Santa, and they do like the "ooh, I'm looking in a mirror" thing when somebody is like looks exactly like you, but it must just be because the quality is so bad.
I think that's it.
Body double, like they didn't have the screen split or anything. There's really two Santas there like walking around each other, so that's why I just assumed it was two different people.
Yeah, no, I think it's purely because the quality is so bad that they can get away with just slapping a Santa beard on somebody and saying like that's the same guy. But we get Art Carney like playing these roles that's just, I think Cosmo Scam obviously gets to lean into his comedy stylings a bit more, but he does a great job across the board, I think.
Cosmo Scam to me felt like a very modern type of comedy also, or just like the way he talked where he's like, I want to make about $1 billion, and talked about like just the way he like described his plan. And then his Santa, I think one of the hardest times I laughed was when he was trying to do the disappearing coin trick. For some reason, it was so funny to me that you could hear the coin falling on the ground.
Yeah,
and all the elves were like, wow.
There's this thing that runs through the special that Santa can only do real magic on Christmas. Like he tries to do like coin magic and stuff early on and fails every time he's trying to do magic. And at first I did not understand why this was funny or where this was going, but it's revealed that essentially, on Christmas he can do real magic and no one else can use evil magic against him.
And he's kind of jealous of Cosmo's magic. Like Cosmo can shoot lightning bolts and stuff like that. And Santa's kind of like, oh, that would be nice. I wish I could do that. But Santa just has nice magic where he can give people presents and make them be his friend. And on that note, I think Art Carney is one of my favorite Santas ever that I've seen in something too.
Wow.
Very, very kind, seemingly kind Santa. Just like carried himself well. Also, the music in this is super funny and like super catchy. Like the song that the elves sing when they're making the toys is really good. And then as the Frackles slowly replace the elves during that one part, and the song just gets like creepier and creepier as they go.
It's such a good little montage. I was like losing my shit during that montage because
it was so funny.
I think what's so good about the character of Cosmo is how smart he thinks he is and just how bad at everything he truly is. Like his plan that he like is spilling out like this genius plan. He'll replace these elves who are starting to catch on that he's Santa one by one with Frackles. And immediately all the other elves are like, something's wrong with Fred because he looks weird and he sounds weird. And they're like, oh, you're on to me. I'll replace you with a Frackle. And he just keeps replacing them one by one with Frackles.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, it's very good. But yeah, they have this song where they're like listing off all their names of who they are. And it always ends with, and Fred. And the first time one of the Frackles pops in, he's just like, and Fred. They're like, okay.
But then my favorite part and my favorite song was when Fred was singing. Fred and Santa have a moment at the beginning where Fred is singing about how much he loves to work and how happy he is to be an elf and how he'll always be there for Santa no matter what Santa needs, and he'll always keep him safe and protect him and be there for him. And he's singing this like really like bombastic loud song and not paying attention while Santa is being kidnapped by the monsters behind him, and then they're like dragging him out of the house and you can still hear Fred singing the song like off in the distance.
Yeah, no, that works so incredibly well, and it's that same sort of humor like we talked about the early like Ed Sullivan Today Show sketches where it's just like one of the musicians is playing too loud, like the Yellow Rose of Texas drummer, or like they're getting the lyrics wrong to a song. Like it's that same sort of joke a little bit, but it's just that he's so enthusiastic and wants to be so helpful and is singing so loud that he doesn't even notice when Santa gets kidnapped by two giant monsters who can barely fit through a door right next to him. Great. Back to Art Carney a little bit. I kind of knew who he was. Like I know he's in the Star Wars Holiday Special. He's a very important role in the Star Wars Holiday Special. And
he's like the friend of he's like the mechanic friend of the Wookiees, is that right?
Yeah, he's the one who brings over presents and stuff and is just sort of their protector.
He's the one who speaks English so that you can understand what's happening in the show.
Yes, and he tries to like trick the stormtroopers into like, don't bother these Wookiees, please leave them alone. And I think he's also the one who brings the Grandpa Wookiee the weird porn VR headset.
He definitely is that, yeah.
And I think we get to see him. He pops up, I think, in like Muppets Take Manhattan and a few other things. But obviously, The Honeymooners is the big thing that he did. And that's where I think most people look back at Art Carney's his starring role is as Ed Norton on The Honeymooners, which I did not realize only ran for one season.
It did?
Yeah.
What the hell?
The Honeymooners was one season of 39 episodes from 1955 to 1956, and then it stopped. And
is that just how all TV was back then? Or
I mean, a lot of it, but like I looked up, like I Love Lucy was like 6 or 7 seasons or something like that. So like there was other shows that ran for longer, but Honeymooners feels like such an institution that it was bizarre to me to find out that it only ran for a year. And I think part of this is because Jackie Gleason went on to have like other shows, like sort of variety shows and talk shows and stuff, where he would have Art Carney come on as Ed Norton.
Oh, and so, they do other Honeymooner sketches?
Yeah, so you'd see sort of like these sketches come on and you'd be like, oh, they're still in the zeitgeist. They're still being talked about. So I feel like he just never really went away as this Ed Norton character for so long that people just, at least I, have it ingrained in my head that he played Art Carney for like 30 years or something.
Weird. Yeah, and also like the Flintstones is like a ripoff of Honeymooners.
Yeah.
So that it just seems like that must have been something that everybody was watching for like 10 years.
Mm-hmm. It was interesting to see sort of like the plot of this, as we talked about, is similar to things like The Grinch and also like Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah, it's very similar to Nightmare Before Christmas.
Especially with like the evil monster land and him kidnapping Santa Claus to become Santa Claus.
For less nice reasons than Jack does.
And that's where I think it slips into the Grinch element a little bit, where very clearly like the Grinch wanted to take all the presents and like ruin Christmas. And that's definitely Cosmo's jam, is that he wants to go in and make the world sad. But yeah, this came after The Grinch came out, so I could see it being slightly inspired by that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It seems maybe a little bit more than slightly inspired by it in some ways.
Yeah, but there's definitely more of a twist on it. Like The Grinch didn't have all his like henchmen working, and he wasn't a wizard and all these things. So there's definitely some originality to it, but I have to assume at some point in the conversations it was like, all right.
It was just the Grinch, Jim. What are you doing?
Well, especially when we look at like when he started formulating the idea for this was even closer to when The Grinch came out.
Oh, yeah, right.
So it was almost like Jim Henson was like, let's do our twist on The Grinch.
Yeah.
And then that
this is
changed
more fun
over time.
than The Grinch, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. I would rather watch this on a yearly basis
is way funnier
than The Grinch.
What is surprising to me about this and Tinker D is like how all of this early Muppet stuff seems to be leading to Fraggle Rock way more than it seems to be leading to the Muppet Show. Like, it seems like they're trying purposefully to get away from that kind of like variety show stuff and into fantasy, and that's weird that it takes so long for them to get there, but that like Jerry and Jim must have had all this stuff in their heads, just like carrying that torch for some reason for like 20 more years or something.
I think you're absolutely right. I think like looking at this, it seems like the Muppet Show just kind of comes out of the TV appearances they would do, and it's just like the extension of somebody saying, well, do you want your own version of this to do your own week-to-week show?
Yeah.
Whereas it feels like what they really wanted to do was Fraggle Rock, and I think, or at least a version of that, and I think that's why we keep getting these weird little movies coming out, is it's that like they have this itch they got to scratch, and they're going to scratch it by doing these Tales from Muppet Land things that they keep doing on the side. But yeah, I would love to, I don't know if there's any like resources out there where we can dive in more to find out like what was holding them back from doing something like Fraggle Rock at the time. Was just nobody interested in doing it, or did they not like...
Feels like that must have been what it was, because like none of these, like Hey Cinderella didn't get picked up for anything, and it seems like they must have probably had to fight for the Frog Prince and the Muppet Musicians of Bremen, because they come out like not close to each other or anything like that.
I wonder if it was just like a series of failed pilots like that just didn't work, and so they had to pivot. And so they pivoted to something like the Muppet Show when they start pitching it with like the sex and violence pilot and things like that. And I wonder if that was just them deciding like, hey, we tried. This clearly isn't working right now. Let's try something completely different. Another
thing that this reminded me of a lot, especially when they are doing that very cool little dance segment when the elves are all dressed like boulders and they're like marionettes whose little legs are moving around, was The Hobbit. I think it would be so cool if Jim Henson had done a version of The Hobbit.
I would be surprised if that didn't almost happen.
If he wasn't sketching some Hobbit puppets.
Yeah, because I think you're right. Like that definitely feels like something that easily could have transitioned into a Hobbit, like instead of that like animated Hobbit TV movie or whatever that existed.
Creepy Ralph Bakshi one.
Yeah, that one. Like instead of that, we could have gotten like a Muppet Lord of the Rings.
Well, with a real Gandalf. They could just remake Lord of the Rings and everybody's a Muppet except for Gandalf guy.
I mean, I'm on board with most things. Like that, there's a Twitter thread that goes around every so often that's like, what movie or TV show would you recast with Muppets and what one human would you keep? And I'm always trying to think like what would be the best one. I think Lord of the Rings would be great. I think West Wing is one that I always look at of like keep Martin Sheen as the president and recast his entire staff with Muppets.
I could also see who's Bradley Cooper? Bradley Whitford.
Oh yeah, Josh Lyman. Like keep him.
I could see him being the only human, and he's just so mad at all the Muppets all the time.
And he's
just like,
make like Fozzie the president, so he's a little inept, and you're just like having to deal with a Fozzie president.
Yeah, but actually, I think Lord of the Rings, I'd rather that all the hobbits be Muppets and everybody else be human. I think that would be cute.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to say about nice things about this. Like.
Yeah, the only thing I think that keeps it from being timeless, and I wish there was like a version of this that existed without the Ed Sullivan parts, because that would make it fold into that Christmas rewatching list much easier if you could just like put on just the Great Santa Claus Switch and you didn't have Ed Sullivan introducing it and you didn't have Ed Sullivan popping up in the middle of it, and just remove the Ed Sullivan parts from this and it's perfect.
It's so wild to me that he had hosted a variety show for 40 years or so and did not ever get any better at doing line reads or standing like a normal human being or interacting with other people.
I think I sent you, there was a TV Guide cover from when this was coming out that was promoting it. And it's a TV Guide cover where like some of the elves are just peering over Ed Sullivan's shoulder, and it looks like he is crying out for help with his eyes. Like it looks like he has been kidnapped by the Muppets in this, and he wants you to save him.
Maybe he thought that the Muppets were real, and Jim Henson knew that, and he was threatening Ed Sullivan, and that's why he got to be on the show so many times, and that's why they got to do their own special. Because he'd like show up, he'd like hide behind Ed Sullivan's couch, and like Kermit would pop up and be like, "Ed, you better give us a Christmas special or we'll break your fucking legs.
They took the personality from the Wilkins commercials and the Ideal Toys commercials, and they're just like,
Yeah.
oh, we can
Kermit
use this
has a
for our
gun.
own good.
Yeah.
Strange things happen to people who don't give us Christmas specials.
Yeah.
So Gonzo is this week's Muppet of the Week because this is his first real kind of appearance. Technically, he is Snarl, the cigar box Frackle, in this, which was nice because I had looked up previously that he was the cigar box Frackle, and they like make a big point out of like, it's in the cigar box. Go look in your cigar box. It's like, oh, here he comes.
Here it comes.
Here he comes.
And he has more. So yeah, he's like a little guy who lives in Cosmo's cigar box and hands him cigars when he needs them. And I was expecting him to just be a little head that popped out and gave him the cigar, and that was all you saw of him. But he like has lines in this and shows up as one of the replacement elves. And I was pleasantly surprised by that.
Yeah, we get to see a little bit of personality from him. He asks Santa for a baseball mitt.
In a very cute way.
Yeah.
That Gonzo will be known for later.
Yeah, that was what I think was most surprising to me, is that even though he is performed by somebody else in this, and this was clearly not meant to be an evolving character,
Sure.
he's not that far off from Gonzo. But we'll see Snarl a few more times before he debuts as Gonzo in 1976 on The Muppet Show. Snarl will sort of pop up. I don't know if he has lines or anything or just like a background Muppet, but he shows up in a few more things between now and The Muppet Show. This puppet was apparently just built in a few hours by Jim Henson. Like Jim Henson, who...
Oh, Jim built this one?
Yeah, who like he
Okay.
hadn't really made puppets since Sam and Friends.
Yeah.
Was sort of just like, here, give me some foam. And apparently he just like cut out some foam in a few hours and made Snarl just like sort of on a whim.
I could kind of see how he would look like a Sam and Friends guy a little bit more than some of them might.
Yeah. I think Gonzo's appearance is one of those that's like definitely stands out from most Muppets. Not a lot of Muppets have that nose or the specific
No.
eye shape or anything. Like, he's a very distinct looking Muppet. In this, he is performed by Daniel Segrin, who was sort of a like additional Muppet performer in the early days of Muppet stuff. He only worked with them from like mid 60s through early 70s. He wasn't there that long. But we've already seen him once before, kind of. He was the Big Bird on the Ed Sullivan Show sketch that we watched.
Oh, when it's
episodes.
wordless and he's just dancing?
Right, when he's just dancing around,
okay.
because apparently Carol Spinney couldn't dance. And so they were like, we want Big Bird to do some complicated things. And they were like, get Dan to do it. So early on, at least, when Big Bird needed to dance, they got Daniel Segrin in to do it. And the other interesting thing about Daniel Segrin is that he was the first live-action Spider-Man.
What?
On the Electric Company, the spin-off sort of show.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
they have a Spider-Man on the Electric Company, which doesn't sound like it makes sense because of the way licensing works these days. But back then, they had a silent Spider-Man who would pop up and have little comic bubbles next to him it would encourage the kids to read what Spider-Man was thinking or saying.
Right.
And so Spider-Man, first live-action Spider-Man, was played by Daniel Segrin on the Electric Company. So first appearance of Gonzo and the first appearance of Spider-Man, same guy.
That's wild. Yeah, I don't know if you listened to our Sesame Street episode, Electric Company was like, not a spin-off of Sesame Street, but a co-production sort of.
Yeah, it was sort of like a slightly older kids version of Sesame Street. They wanted to make this thing that clearly did well. People know the Electric Company. Didn't do as well as Sesame Street did in the long run, but they had some very interesting segments. I have not seen a lot of Electric Company, but the idea that Spider-Man was a regular person on there is interesting. But yeah, Gonzo. He is the great Gonzo, Gonzo the Great, the Daredevil performance artist that was, he was originally introduced as like the frustrated performance artist. In the first episode of The Muppet Show, he's eating a tire to Flight of the Bumblebee. And you're just introduced to this guy who gets shot out of cannons. He like is a part of every episode, and kind of like Fozzie early on. He's just like sort of sad, isn't great at his job, and doesn't really get that like support from everybody else. He always seems like Kermit early on seems reluctant to have any of these people on his show.
All the Muppets are weird freaks, but they specifically call Gonzo out for being a weird freak more than they do anybody else ever.
Which I would say is sometimes justified.
Yeah. I suppose there are some certain characteristics, yes.
I think Gonzo is the most flirtatious Muppet.
Got a sexual energy, yes.
Very weird, like, kind of energy to him where normally he has his girlfriend Camilla the chicken. That's who we kind of know Gonzo has a thing for chickens, specifically Camilla, but sometimes he gets confused and doesn't know which chicken is Camilla, which upsets her.
Yeah.
But we've also seen Gonzo be flirtatious with humans, chickens. There's an episode of the Muppet Show where he's flirtatious with a cow.
Like Miss Piggy in the Muppet movie?
Yeah. He kind of seems like he'll flirt with anybody.
Yeah, he's lecherous. It's because of his nose shape, I think, probably.
He just points, he's like, eh?
Yeah.
It's like the eggplant emoji, but on his face. He just like, eh? But his species is unknown. I think that's people who watch a lot of Muppet stuff will know that they often refer to him as just a whatever or an alien he somehow accidentally sort of becomes at some point, but then they also go back on that a little bit. It's pretty much it's a contradictory history for Gonzo throughout many aspects of him, because he's referred to a whatever for the first time in The Great Muppet Caper in 1981, but also, like, for a long time, no one really knows what he is. They think he's some kind of turkey. They refer to him as maybe a jungle bird. They say he's maybe a blue chicken or a monkey with a banana nose. And then Muppets from Space seemingly answers this question, because the whole movie is about Gonzo not really knowing where he's from and then finding out that it's actually, there's an alien race that comes down and they all look exactly like him. And he realizes, oh, I've been an alien this whole time. But Dave Goelz, who has been the performer for Gonzo since Gonzo actually debuted as Gonzo on the Muppet Show, suggested that the events from Muppets from Space were just a movie, and that like he's not for sure an alien. It's one of those things where, again, where we're talking about the canon of the Muppets, there's never going to be like a clear answer for a lot of this stuff. So I think calling him the whatever or the weirdo or whatever just feels like it sort of is the most appropriate.
Sure.
Because they've used this both like poetically and less poetically throughout the years. They've talked about Gonzo and said, you might not know what you are, but you know who you are. And like
that's nice.
Yeah, and I think we get hints of that too when he's singing the like I'm going to go back there someday in the Muppet movie.
Right.
We get these hints that he feels like he doesn't belong as a part of this normal group, but he belongs somewhere that he hopes to find. But I think a lot of his character is accepting the fact that, like, no, he can still be a part of this group. But less poetically, Dave Goelz again said...
I'm worried about what you're going to say.
So about his species, about Gonzo's species and who he is.
Oh, okay.
Said, nobody knows except his parents, and they're not talking. It was always one of those taboo subjects around the dinner table.
Okay.
Which I'm like, what does that even mean, Dave?
Yeah.
That feels to me like an answer Dave just came up with during an interview that didn't really have a lot of thought behind it.
But like, what is Uncle Deadly? Or like, what is Sweetums? This is something that bothers me about Gonzo, is that there's other Muppets that look weird and nobody's ever like, what's Scooter? Scooter's just like, he looks kind of like a monkey too or something. Nobody ever spends a lot of time wondering about him.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a nose.
Yeah.
Gonzo, the question of who he is to me seems so fruitless that things like Muppets from Space or that bothers me. I don't care. And then you make me think about it. And then it's like, well, I don't know what any of these guys are. So.
Yeah, because it's really easy to run down the list and say like, oh, we have a frog, a pig, a bear, a dog, and I don't know, whatever. And it's like, yeah, that works, but only with that specific group of Muppets. As soon as you introduce somebody like Scooter or Beauregard or something like that, you're just like...
Yeah, Beauregard's way freakier looking than Gonzo.
Yeah, he's like a weird hairy potato or something.
Yeah.
Like, that joke only works when he's around the very easily identifiable animal Muppets.
Yeah, plus there are other Frackles in that stick around after Santa Claus Switch, too, and nobody ever wonders what they are.
Yeah, and I think it's just sort of accepted that a lot of the Muppets are not human, but are this sort of Muppet human exists. Because like Scooter to me feels like a human. You get Walter eventually in the Muppets movie in 2011 that is just sort of like his brother is Jason Segel, but he's also a Muppet. So I think I felt the same way in doing this research about Gonzo that like, wait, why is he the one that is separated from the pack as being weird because they don't know what he is?
Yeah. Doesn't make any sense to me.
Because animal, what the hell is animal?
That's a great point, Matt.
As far as Gonzo's family is concerned, we obviously have the Muppets from Space angle of things, of like maybe his family is all aliens from another planet.
Mm-hmm.
But like a lot of other Muppets, this gets really contradictory when you get into more canon of whether it's like the Muppet Kids books, Muppet Babies, or these things. There's an episode of The Muppet Show where, I don't know how this comes up, but apparently Gonzo says that his mother died before he was born. But then later on in Muppets Tonight, Gonzo claims that his mother liked his unique interpretation of Death of a Salesman that he did. So clearly his mother saw him.
Get your facts straight, Gonzo.
And then later on, there's a video on Muppets.com where he answers about his first stunt, which was his birth. And he mentions his mother in that.
Okay.
And so...
Well, maybe she was dead at the time.
That's quite the stunt. But then there's also, in the Muppet Kids books, it is implied that his grandmother and his aunt are raising him.
Oh, what the heck?
Yeah, so he like lives with his grandmother and his Aunt Grace at that time. So his parents aren't around, so it's also like, okay, maybe his mom did die before he was born somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And then he also has a couple of cousins that are mentioned throughout the years. We have Cousin Gander and Cousin Kevin. Cousin Kevin just pops up playing like his stunt double in a magic act kind of thing he does. And then Cousin Gander is just from the Muppet Kids books as like an annoying little kid cousin. But we
Goose name, though. That's interesting.
I think that was part of the, like they were going for a lot of these Muppets have family members who all start with the same letter. So they had Grace and Gander. Then there's Kevin. So I can't really explain Kevin. But we mentioned Dave Goelz. He is the performer of Gonzo and has been since 1976. Dave Goelz is also the performer behind Beauregard, Dr. Bunsen Honeydew, Zoot, Boober Fraggle, Uncle Traveling Matt, and he took over Waldorf when Jim Henson died. Do you want to guess where Dave Goelz met Frank Oz?
Probably at a puppet convention.
You're right. In 1972, they met at a puppetry festival. And then during a vacation in New York, Dave Goelz started attending some Sesame Street tapings just to like see what's up, like hang out with his friend Frank. And then a few months later, Goelz showed his portfolio to Jim Henson. And then in 1973, he was offered a job with Jim Henson Associates as a part-time puppet builder.
So easy to get a job back then.
Yeah, you just had to run into people and be like, hey, you like puppets? Me too.
We don't have the internet yet, so we don't know what other weirdos out there like puppets.
Yeah.
Just us. Just like us 5 people.
So I mentioned at the beginning of this that Gonzo is one of my favorite Muppets. And I think we talked a little bit during the Muppet Movie episode on your feelings about Gonzo. But how do you feel about him sort of overall?
I love Gonzo, but I'm sometimes frustrated by Gonzo. So I love the fact that Gonzo and Rizzo, like I love that comedy duo. They're so funny and they're like the perfect people to be like the narrators for Muppet Christmas Carol. I think it's weird that Gonzo still has this like Daredevil thing tied to him when nowadays he is actually like pretty normal compared to like his personality is just like the nice kind of like, he's like the Chandler of the Muppets almost. He's like the funny one who's like nice to hang out with and he has a ton of friends and like everybody likes Gonzo. And he's like talented and he's like in the writer's room in the new Muppet TV show that got canceled. And like, he just seems like extremely competent and like really got it together. But then there's like this weird leftover angle where like he likes to get hurt or something, but that doesn't really happen that much anymore. Or like in Muppet Christmas Carol, like Rizzo's the one who's always getting hurt and Gonzo's like, you're lucky that you got hurt. But then like nothing bad ever really happens to Gonzo. So I don't get Gonzo.
I feel like the best way they've dealt with that recently was in the 2011 Muppets movie, because in that he has sort of like settled down. He's trying to be serious about his life. He has like a plumbing company and a toilet company, whatever it is. And it feels like him and Camilla have sort of put that old life behind them and they're settled down to be like running a business together. And then when Kermit comes to recruit him to come back and help out the Muppets, he reverts back into that stuntman life.
The great Gonzo.
Yeah, so it feels like it's this thing that he put behind him, but then still misses, which I feel like is sort of the way that you can still do that. If like it's Evel Knievel later in life, where he's like, I used to do all these cool things, but can't do it so much
that
anymore.
Makes sense, I guess.
But you're right. Like with the Muppets ABC like sitcom show, they don't really touch on that too much, and it's not really it's not a huge part of his character on that.
No. And it's also like he's been played by the same person for so long.
Which is very
That's
interesting
weird.
because so many Muppets have had to transfer because of people retiring or dying or other things, that it's very rare to have a Muppet who has been performed by the same person since day one.
Right. So there must be a lot of like where Dave Goelz wanted to take the character in that. But I guess Gonzo in the original Muppet Show is kind of one-dimensional. Like, there's not a lot you can do with that character because he's kind of just like an annoying little brother type almost, or something, like not fully fleshed out. But I like him. I like him, and I like him, Pepe, Rizzo dynamic. I think is one of the better late stage Muppet things. Like, he is the saving grace of the Muppets these days, I feel like.
Yeah, I think that dynamic, especially on the ABC show, works really well with them being the writers on that show. And I think Pepe and Rizzo both were sort of like a necessary injection of new Muppets that came along in the 80s or 90s that feels like it has helped the Muppets stay relevant for a long time.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's so interesting thinking about Dave Goelz. Started playing Gonzo when he was like 29 and has now been playing him up until he is 74.
Holy shit. His voice still sounds very young, too.
Right? Like, he's done a really good job of, like, I'm sure if you go and compare some Gonzos to others, it sounds a little different. But I think because Gonzo started off like raspy and kind of tired sounding, it's probably easier to do as a 74-year-old man.
That's a good point.
But like playing the same character for 45 years.
Why do you like him so much?
I think I touched on this a little bit before, but like the existential moments, I think for me,
those are pretty
when
good.
they make the Muppets feel real, or when the Muppets have real emotions that feel like it's a character trait from outside of the story we're trying to tell. His song in the Muppet movie is not necessary to that movie at all. They're just sitting around the campfire and he starts dreaming about when he was floating up with the balloons. And I think we get moments from all the Muppets throughout the years of things like that it's not super important to the plot. If anything, it slows it down, and I'm sure those are the things that producers are like, can we cut this? And it says a lot to me that they don't cut that kind of stuff and that they leave that in because we get to see more about these characters and sort of who they really are. And I think because we get those moments of Gonzo either feeling existential about who he is and where he's from, or getting to see him, the flirtatious side of thing also opens him up a little bit into...
Yeah, that's true.
Like, he has a personality of, like, he wants to date. He has this long-term girlfriend. He has all these things that are just, like, not usually important to the overall story, but are, like, character traits about him that, to me, are more interesting than some other character traits of people. Like, you don't get that much depth on a lot of the Muppets. Yeah.
That's a great point. Yeah.
I don't know.
That makes sense to me.
I think going to go back there someday is one of those things that just like solidified him very early on for me as one of my favorite Muppets. And I think it's going to be hard to undo any of that in my head. I do think that in recent years, they haven't done as much with him to keep that sort of spirit alive. And like, he has become less the focus, obviously. Like Kermit and Miss Piggy get a lot of the focus in a lot of the newer stuff.
Yeah, but maybe Gonzo actually anchors projects better than Kermit does. Like, a lot of what you're saying about personality traits and stuff are things that bother me about Kermit. Like, Kermit feels kind of insincere to me because he's kind of like their boss and like their producer. It's hard for me to like feel the same depth of complicated emotions and like failure and stuff with him that like Gonzo and Fozzie get across so much better. So maybe that is to their detriment that Kermit is like the main character. He never maybe was supposed to be the main character.
I am excited to watch sort of the actual evolution of Gonzo through this to see when he starts to get a little bit deeper, because we have those moments early on in the Muppet Show where he is just the guy blowing himself up or shooting himself in a cannon and these things. And then by 1979, when we have the Muppet movie, he's clearly got some more to him. I'm sure we'll get some more insight into some of the other Muppets, and maybe they'll become my favorites or push Gonzo down the list a bit more. But for now, I think Gonzo still sits pretty high up on that list.
Yeah, he is, I got to admit, one of the top tier Muppets.
It's one of those things where if they did a Muppet thing show now without Gonzo in it, it would definitely feel like he was missing, as opposed to some of the other side characters who you could kind of get away with not having Beauregard show up.
We're forgetting to star rate the Muppets that we're talking about.
We've
what
never
star
done
rating
that.
would you give? We did it once for Sam the Eagle.
Oh, did we?
I keep wanting to go back.
That makes sense.
How many stars would you give Gonzo?
I mean, he gets a 5-star from me.
I think he's gonna get a 5-star from me too.
How many stars did I give Sam?
50.
Oh.
We can round that down to 5, I suppose.
I guess. Yeah, I don't know what the scale is for the star ratings.
Well, it's 1 to 5. But
I feel like Gonzo should get 67. If I gave Sam 50, I feel like he should just get a weird number like 67 stars.
That's perfect. That makes sense to me. 67 stars. I'll give him 60.
Okay, that feels fair. All right, well, we could talk about Gonzo probably again for like a full hour, because if you want to go down a rabbit hole, go to Gonzo's Muppet Wiki pages and just keep on reading, because there's so much there. There's a whole page on Muppet Wiki about Gonzo's attraction to chickens. So you can get really into that.
Probably the only Muppet whose sexual predilections have their own wiki page, I'd imagine.
But moving on, we've got non-Muppet things, I'm sure, that we've watched this week. I assume. Again, sometimes our weeks are fully taken up by only Muppet things. Was that the case this week, Sam?
Well, I think I know maybe what you're going to say that you watched, and I watched it too. What are you going to say?
I watched last night The Mitchells versus the Machines.
I also watched that last night, and I saw you tweet about it. That's like the only thing I watched this week.
Yeah, I finished Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but...
Oh, yeah.
I don't have a ton to say about that. It was...
I kind of wish it had been a better and a movie.
Absolutely.
I think it would have been a perfectly fine movie.
I think so, too. I think you cut that down to like 2.5 hours. Perfect. Yeah. Not perfect, but fine.
Because the Sam and Bucky parts were the best parts, and they needed to flesh out the villain better, and Zemo could have been in it, and it should have just been a movie. But yeah, so the Mitchells versus the Machines. You liked it a lot.
You did not, I'm guessing.
I liked it okay. I like Spider-Man, and I like Lego Movie better, and I like Clone High better, and I like 21 Jump Street better. Like, of the Miller and Lord stuff, this is low tier for me. I think there was like a Hello Fellow Kids aspect to some of it. It's like it's hard to recreate what the internet thinks is funny, and that is what one whole character's entire character is, and none of those landed for me. But I just think that particular vein of humor didn't do it for me, but I liked all the rest of it.
Yeah, it's hard to feel timely with a character whose personality is tied so tightly to the internet, when the internet...
And YouTube and not TikTok, which I thought was kind of like...
See, I liked that aspect because to me, one, this character was like somebody if like... I'm looking at this character, I'm like, oh, that's just me in high school.
Yeah.
Essentially, like making dumb videos with my friends, making her own puppets that looked bizarrely like the puppets we just made for our Muppets on Puppets episode.
That's true.
Like her red sock puppet with like googly eyes, I was like, oh, that's just the puppet I made.
Yeah.
But her being super into film and being excited to go off to a California film school and all these things, I was like, this is who I was in high school. And so that felt like if she was like a film snob, she's not going to be into TikTok. She's going to be into YouTube and like uploading custom videos and stuff. So I didn't like ping to me as super weird, but I think just sort of the idea, I think you're right. There's a little bit of the fellow kids thing because of sort of what kind of video is popular on the internet, and that like those videos she made would be something that would be taking over the internet world, and that would be super popular. Yeah. Because I don't think they would be.
That would be like if she was releasing stuff in like 2006.
Yeah, like early YouTube, that stuff would have been great and like super popular. That didn't bug me as much. I think I enjoyed it. Not necessarily as much as Spider-Verse, but like pretty close to like a Lego Movie for me. I really enjoyed it a lot, and I think it's something where I had no expectations when it was first announced. I saw the trailer, I was like, okay, this could easily fall into sort of that like Despicable Me category of animated film that I don't really care too much about.
Yeah.
And it definitely exceeded those expectations.
That's a good point in comparison to what animated children's movies are.
Like when you have like the folder of like Disney
movie.
Pixar things, and they're like its own little bubble, and then you have everything outside of that trends towards Despicable Me a little bit more, or like in the worst case, like the Emoji Movie. So I'm glad that this is much closer to like the Disney Pixar side of things.
Yeah, I liked it better than I liked Onward, which I was extremely disappointed in.
Same, actually.
And it's very similar, like family road trip movie kind of thing.
Yeah, I did not enjoy Onward that much at all, and I enjoyed this much more. And I think this is a nice mix of art styles that I think was really interesting as well, where
that was really cool.
It's clearly 3D animated, and sometimes they really lean into the 3D animated stuff, but they also lean a lot into the 2D, very flat style, similar to the things they used in Spider-Verse to make it look like a hand-drawn thing. But there's a lot. I don't know. It's one of those that, like, if you're on the fence about it because it's not a Disney or Pixar thing, and you're like, I don't know about these, I would definitely say go watch it.
It's free. Just watch it.
Yeah. I mean, it's free if you have Netflix. Like,
it's $7 a month, or whatever. How much is Netflix now? $15?
I was going to say Netflix with 4K is like $18 a month now.
Oh, I don't get that.
No.
But maybe I should.
It's nice. The Mitchells vs. the Machines looks great in 4K, but it's a lot of fun. I think there are definitely, some of the things you're saying about it are true, that it does have a little bit of that vibe whenever you're trying to dip into internet culture. You're going to be behind the times a little bit because it moves so fast, and also when you're adults talking about what teens are into, you're going to miss the mark a little bit. But I think they still get a little bit of that where they have sort of like a Snapchat, Instagram type thing that the kids are using to communicate with each other.
Right, but it kind of sometimes seems like they are. That seems a little confusing to me too, because they're like Instagram storying each other, but they're also directly communicating with each other in those Instagram stories. It just felt like something people our age would write about the internet, or like people even a little bit older than us. It'd be like, this must be how the internet works in some of the parts. And those parts I was just like, well, if a real kid watches this, they're going to be like, that's not how the internet works. But for people, if you're 30, this movie is great for you. This is a perfect fit. I also kind of miss the age of voice actors and not celebrities voicing characters. I just wasn't really blown away by Danny McBride. Was mostly as the dad was mostly my problem.
Yeah,
with the voice acting, I think everybody else did great. But he just was a little like, I didn't believe that voice coming out of that guy. I guess in a way, like it didn't match or something.
It felt almost like a role that was created for somebody like Craig T. Nelson, and they were like, well, we can't just have Mr. Incredible.
We can't have Mr. Incredible, even though this guy looks exactly like Mr. Incredible with a mustache on.
Yeah, like it felt like...
That's a good point.
It was Mr. Incredible a little bit, but they just couldn't do that.
He looked like he should have had Ron Swanson's voice coming out of him, and I'm surprised they didn't just pull the trigger on that.
Yeah, a little bit more like an actual like husky, like manly voice kind of guy.
Yeah. But yeah, I liked it. There's not really much to complain about there. It was a very good animated movie, which that doesn't happen super often.
And the mall scene with the Furbies and the robots is very, very good.
That's another part where it's like for people our age and not for actual kids, though.
That's very true.
They don't know what Furbies are. And even in the kids in there are like, I don't know what Furbies are. But then the kids in real life will also be like, I don't know what Furbies are. This doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah.
But the Furbies are really funny.
The whole Furby scene.
They make exactly the right sounds to be terrifying.
Especially the large one. It was like at one point tipping over and she's like, ah.
Just the sound you hear coming out of your closet in the middle of the night, like a year after you were done thinking your Furby was fun.
So next week, we are going to be watching The Frog Prince, another fairy tale TV special done by the Muppets. That's available to watch on archive.org if you're looking to watch it with us. And we'll also be watching Carol Spinney's appearance on To Tell the Truth, and a segment from the Goldie Hawn special Pure Goldie, which you can find on YouTube.
Also, the Frog Prince debuts my least favorite Muppet of all time, and I'm curious to see. Maybe of all time.
Ooh.
I don't know.
Well, we'll get into that because Robin will be our Muppet of the Week as we talk about the Frog Prince. And these are all from 1971, which we did all of 1970 pretty much in this episode. 1971 we're going to be splitting up over 2 episodes because there's enough worth talking about that we're going to split it up. But you can find the playlist for the To Tell the Truth and Pure Goldie clip on our Twitter account at Kermitment, and we'll also tweet out the link to the archive.org page where you can watch the Frog Prince. Before we go, we need to thank our friend Tuna for creating the music for this podcast, and Cassie Wilson for singing the theme song. As I mentioned before, you can follow us on Twitter at Kermitment, where you can find the playlist, as well as just fun things we decide to tweet throughout the week. If you've got something longer than a tweet that you would like to say to us, you can email us at mail@kermitment.com. And you can follow me at Matthew Gatos.
And I'm at Slam Schultz.
And as always, keep believing.
Keep pretending.